you walk into a store right now and steal $50 from the register, you will be in handcuffs before the sun goes down. That is justice. But if you sit in a glass tower and steal $50 billion from the economy, you don't get a prison cell. You get a bonus and a private yacht. Why? Because of a secret legal weapon that shields the elite from the law. It is called the corporate veil, and it makes them legally untouchable. Today, I'm going to show you the blueprint of how Wall Street turned crime into a business model. From the clone trick to the too big to jail doctrine. You are about to learn why the system isn't broken. It was rigged from the start. Welcome to the true story of the corporate veil.
Let me ask you a simple, uncomfortable question. What happens if you walk into a convenience store right now, slide a $50 bill out of the register, and get caught? You know the answer. The police arrive. You feel the cold steel of handcuffs on your wrists. You are processed, fingerprinted, and thrown into a cell. You lose your reputation, your job, and your freedom. The justice system is swift, and it is brutal. But now, let's flip the script. What happens if you sit in a glass-walled office in Manhattan and orchestrate a fraudulent scheme that wipes out $50 billion from the retirement accounts of hard-working teachers and firefighters? What happens when you gamble away the economy of an entire country? If history is any indicator, the answer is absolutely nothing. Actually, that's not entirely true. You might get a multi-million-dollar bonus for your performance. You might get invited to speak at prestigious universities about financial history and leadership. And while the guy who stole $50 is rotting in a county jail, you are sipping champagne on a private yacht, miles away from the chaos you created. It sounds like fiction, doesn't it? It sounds like the plot of a dystopian movie, but have you ever looked at the news and felt like the game is rigged? Have you ever wondered why the biggest thieves in history never seem to wear prison orange? Stay with me, because the answer isn't just about money or expensive lawyers. It is about something much deeper, a fundamental flaw in the architecture of our society that has turned white-collar crime into the most profitable industry on earth. We are taught from a young age that the law is blind, that it applies equally to the pauper and the prince. But if you look closely at the political economy of the last century, you will realize that this is the greatest illusion ever sold to the public. There is a secret law, a hidden mechanism that operates in the shadows of Wall Street. It is a legal force field that separates the man from his actions. It allows a person to commit crimes through an entity, destroy livelihoods, and wash their hands of the guilt. We call this mechanism the corporate veil. You might be thinking, well, isn't that just how business works? That's what they want you to think. But what you're about to discover now might surprise you. This wasn't always the way the world worked. There was a time when bankers were terrified of failure, a time when losing other people's money meant losing your own freedom. But somewhere along the line, the rules changed. The definition of crime was rewritten by the very people committing the crimes. This is where the story gets dark. We aren't just talking about loopholes. We are talking about organized crime masquerading as high finance. We are looking at a system where the punishment for destroying the global economy is a tax-deductible fine, paid not by the criminals, but by the shareholders, and often by you, the taxpayer. It is a model where crime is not a bug in the system. It is a feature. It is a calculated business expense. Think about the last time you paid a parking ticket. You paid it because you had to. Now imagine if you could rob a bank for $1 million and the penalty was a $10 ticket. Would you stop robbing banks? Or would you start doing it every single day as a business strategy? That is the reality of money, power, and history in the modern age. I want you to forget everything you think you know about justice for a moment. We need to peel back the layers of this complicated legal fiction. We need to look at how a tool designed to protect innovation was weaponized to protect corruption. The man in the mask robbing the liquor store is a villain we can see. But the man in the bespoke suit, hiding behind the corporate veil, is a ghost. He is there, but legally, he doesn't exist. So how did we get here? How did we build a society where the size of your bank account determines the reality of your prison sentence? To understand this, we have to go beyond the headlines. We have to look at the invisible shield that stands between the elite and the consequences of their actions. It's a shield that has been forged over centuries, polished by lobbyists, and ignored by the history books. But today, we are going to look right at it. We are going to deconstruct the legal magic trick that keeps the rich free and the rest of us paying the bill. Because once you see how the trick is done, you can never unsee it. It is heavy to digest, isn't it? Realizing that the playing field isn't just tilted, but entirely vertical, can feel overwhelming. It makes you question how much of what we call justice is real and how much is just theater. But here is the thing. You are not alone in feeling this way. There is a whole community of us waking up to this reality, and that is why we are here. If this topic resonates with you, if you believe it is time we stop ignoring the man behind the curtain and start demanding real answers, I want to invite you to join us. Go ahead and hit that like button, not just for the metrics, but as a signal that stories like this matter. It tells the algorithm that we want the truth, not just entertainment. And if you want to keep digging deeper into the hidden history of money and power with me, make sure you are subscribed. Your participation here is exactly what makes this channel grow. It helps us push this message past the noise and reach more people who need to hear it. I am genuinely curious though. Does this sense of a double standard ring true in your own life? Maybe you've seen a small business owner crushed by regulations while a giant corporation just skated by? If this hits home for you, leave a comment below telling me what part of this touches a nerve. I read what you write, and it helps shape where we take this investigation next. But now that we are here together, let's not stop at just feeling angry. Let's understand how it works. To do that, we have to look at the mechanics of the deception. We have to examine the shield itself, because once you understand the legal engineering behind it, the why becomes terrifyingly clear. To really grasp the architecture of this corruption, we have to strip away the jargon and the complex legal terminology that lawyers intentionally use to keep the public in the dark. When you clear the smoke, you are left with a concept that is as brilliant as it is terrifying. This isn't just about dry laws. It is about a fundamental transformation in how human beings are allowed to operate in society. It is the mechanism that separates the soul from the action, the decision from the consequence. Imagine for a moment that you have a superpower. Imagine that you could snap your fingers and create a clone of yourself. This isn't a biological clone, but a legal one. It looks like you on paper, it acts on your behalf, and it follows your commands. You can send this clone out into the world to do business for you. This clone can sign contracts, it can borrow massive amounts of money, and it can buy property. But here is the catch, and this is the hidden truth that makes the entire system work for Wall Street. This clone is the only one responsible for its actions. Let's play this scenario out. You, the human being, tell your clone to take a massive financial gamble. You tell it to sell toxic assets to pension funds, knowing full well those assets are garbage. The clone does exactly what you say. It signs the papers. The deal goes through. The money comes in, and you, the human, take that money and put it in your private pocket. You buy the house in the Hamptons, you pay for the private schools, you live the life of a king. But then, the market crashes. The toxic assets explode. The pension funds lose everything. The authorities come looking for someone to blame. In a sane world, they would come for you. You made the decisions. You gave the orders. You profited from the fraud. But in the world of the corporate veil, the police don't knock on your door. They knock on the clone's door. The clone, which is just a stack of papers filed in Delaware, takes the fall. The clone declares bankruptcy. The clone gets sued. The clone might even be killed, dissolved. But you are sitting in your living room watching it all on the news, completely untouched. Your personal assets are safe. Your freedom is secure. You are legally invisible. This is the corporate veil. It is a wall of separation between the company and the person. This concept changes everything about the human mindset. Think about how you live your life. You are careful because you know that if you drive recklessly, you get hurt. If you steal, you go to jail. Your journey through life is guided by the fear of consequences. But the corporate veil removes that fear. It creates a state of existence where risk is divorced from reality. For the bankers on Wall Street, this veil acts as a shield of invincibility. It allows them to view the economy not as a community of people, but as a video game where they have infinite lives. If they crash the car, they just get a new one. This is the impact that is rarely discussed in the mainstream media. They talk about market forces and bad apples, but they rarely talk about the structural reality that incentivizes bad behavior. When you realize that the corporation is considered a person in the eyes of the law, a person that can't go to prison, can't feel pain, and has no conscience, you start to see the behind-the-scenes reality of high finance. The corporation is a psychopath by design, and the corporate veil is the mask it wears. The law calls this limited liability, and on the surface, it sounds like a reasonable protection for business owners. But in the hands of the financial elite, it has become the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. It turns massive fraud into a simple administrative problem. It turns criminal negligence into a tax write-off. We are looking at a system where a banker can look you in the eye, rob you blind through his corporate avatar, and legally say, "It wasn't me, it was the company." This detachment is what allows for the scale of corruption we see today. It is hard for a human being to physically steal $1 billion from people's wallets. It takes time, effort, and you have to see the victims' faces. But behind the corporate veil, stealing $1 billion is just a keystroke. It is a decision made in a boardroom, protected by layers of corporate entities, subsidiaries, and shell companies. It is a labyrinth designed to confuse investigators and protect the architects of the scheme. The revelations we find when we study this are disturbing. We see that this isn't an accident. The system isn't broken. It was built this way. It creates a class of people who operate above the moral laws that govern the rest of us. While you worry about paying your bills and following the rules, there is a parallel universe where the rules are optional and the bills are passed on to the taxpayer. It is crucial to understand that this legal structure essentially privatizes the profits and socializes the losses. When the clone wins, the human keeps the gold. When the clone loses, society pays the debt. This creates a perverse incentive structure where the most reckless behavior is the most rewarded. Why wouldn't you take $1 billion risk if you knew you wouldn't have to pay for the failure? Why wouldn't you break the law if the penalty was just a fee paid by the clone, not prison time for you? This is the engine of the crime. This is the heart of the beast. And once you understand the concept of the corporate veil, every news story about a bank paying a fine instead of a CEO going to prison starts to make perfect sense. It's not a failure of justice. It is the corporate veil working exactly as intended. It is the ultimate magic trick, performed right in front of our eyes, making responsibility disappear into thin air. I want you to really let that sink in. The idea that a legal piece of paper can absolve a human being of moral and criminal responsibility is a heavy concept. It challenges everything we believe about right and wrong. If this analogy of the clone helped you visualize how the system is rigged, I want to know. It's important that we find ways to explain these complex traps simply. Drop a comment below saying, "I see the clone now." Let me know that you are following this thread. But here is where the story takes a twist. You might assume that this law was invented by evil men in a dark room to destroy society. But the truth is far more complex and ironic. To understand how this weapon was forged, we have to go back in time. We have to look at a moment in history when this idea was actually a good thing. To understand the magnitude of this betrayal, we have to travel back in time. We need to look at the hidden truth of how our modern economy was actually built, because the context changes everything. It is easy to look at Wall Street today and think the entire system was rigged from day one, but the reality is more nuanced and in many ways, more tragic. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding the origin story is the only way to see how far we have fallen. Let's go back to the 19th century. Imagine the smoke of steam engines, the clamor of steel mills, and the raw energy of the Industrial Revolution. This was a time of massive transformation for the human race. We were building railroads across continents, laying telegraph cables under the oceans, and constructing the infrastructure of the modern world. But here was the problem. These projects were incredibly dangerous and expensive. If you were a wealthy merchant in 1850 and you wanted to invest in a new railway line, You were taking a gamble that could ruin your entire life. If that train derailed, or if the bridge collapsed, you weren't just losing your investment. Under the old laws, the creditors could come for everything you owned. They could take your house, your land, your personal savings, and leave you and your family destitute. The risk was absolute. This created a massive bottleneck for progress. Smart people were afraid to innovate because the penalty for failure was total destruction. So, society made a collective decision. Governments and economists came together to create a new legal tool, a social contract designed to encourage risk-taking for the greater good. They created limited liability. The deal was simple and, at the time, noble. It said, if you are willing to pool your money to build something great for society, like a factory or a railroad, we will protect your personal life from the business's failure. You can only lose what you invest, nothing more. It was a shield. It was designed to protect the brave entrepreneur who was actually building the physical world. It was about fueling a journey of progress that would lift nations out of poverty. But fast forward to the 21st century, and look at the transformation that has taken place. That shield, once forged to protect the builders of industry, has been stolen by the gamblers of high finance. What was designed to cover the honest mistakes of innovation is now being used to cover the intentional malice of fraud. The mindset has shifted completely. In the 19th century, the corporation was a vehicle for production. Today, on Wall Street, the corporation is often a vehicle for extraction. The financial elite have taken this protective shield and sharpened its edges. They have turned it into a sword. They use the corporate veil not to defend themselves against bad luck, but to attack the economy itself. Think about the decisions being made in those glass towers right now. When a bank creates a complex, fraudulent derivative product that they know will fail, they aren't innovating. They aren't building a railroad. They are setting a trap. They are betting against the very clients they are supposed to serve. And they do it because they are holding that stolen shield. They know that when the trap snaps shut and the economy bleeds, the corporate veil will block the splatter. This is the revelation that hurts the most. The law that saves them was written to help us. They perverted the original intention so thoroughly that it is almost unrecognizable. They have created a casino where the house never loses, and if the house does catch fire, they lock the doors and make the patrons pay for the damage. We are witnessing a fundamental distortion of capitalism. True capitalism requires risk. If you want the reward, you must bear the risk. That is the engine that keeps the market honest. But the modern impact of the corporate veil on Wall Street has destroyed this balance. We have entered an era of risk-free capitalism for the elite and high-risk survival for everyone else. They have engineered a system where they can privatize the profits and socialize the losses. When the gamble pays off, the bonuses flow into their private accounts, hundreds of millions of dollars buying islands and art. But when the gamble fails, when the bubble bursts, the loss stays with the corporation. And because these corporations are deemed too big to fail, that loss is eventually transferred to the public ledger. This is not what the architects of the Industrial Revolution had in mind. They wanted to protect the man who tried to build a bridge and failed. They did not intend to protect the man who burned down the bridge to collect the insurance money. The behind-the-scenes reality is that this historical context is rarely taught. We are led to believe that corporate protections are just a natural force of nature, like gravity. But they aren't. They are a choice, and the people currently in power have chosen to maintain this distortion because it is the most profitable business model in history. It generates a profound sense of injustice when you realize that the tool effectively grants immunity from the consequences of one's own actions. It infantilizes the most powerful people in the world, treating them like children who cannot be held responsible for the messes they make, while the rest of us are held to the strictest standards of accountability. This journey through history reveals that the corporate veil is no longer a tool of economics. It is a weapon of class warfare. It allows a small group of people to extract wealth from the system without contributing value, and to commit crimes without facing the time. As we look at this, we have to ask ourselves, at what point does a protective measure become a license to kill? At what point does a law designed to foster innovation become a shackle on justice? The transition from shield to sword didn't happen overnight. It happened through thousands of small lobbying efforts, court rulings, and deregulations. all designed to thicken the veil and make it impenetrable. And this brings us to a terrifying realization. If the penalty for a crime is merely a financial cost borne by a third party, the company, then the crime itself ceases to be a crime in the eyes of the perpetrator. It becomes something else entirely. It becomes a line item. It becomes a calculation. If you are feeling a mix of anger and clarity right now, that is a good thing. It means the fog is lifting. We need to understand that this isn't about bad business. This is about a structural design that incentivizes corruption. I'm curious if this historical twist surprises you. Most people think these laws were always rigged, but knowing they were once noble makes the corruption even worse. Drop a comment below with the phrase, "The shield is broken," if you agree that it's time to rethink how these laws apply to modern bankers. But knowing the history is only half the battle. Now that we understand how they are protected and where the law came from, we need to look at what they are actually doing with this protection today. We need to examine the day-to-day operations, because when you stop fearing prison, your business model changes. You stop looking for customers to serve and you start looking for victims to harvest. What follows is not just unethical, it is the blueprint of organized crime. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what we are uncovering here isn't just a legal loophole, it is a fundamental shift in the mindset of modern capitalism. We need to stop looking at these banks as clumsy institutions that accidentally break the law because they are too big to manage. That is the cover story. The truth is far more sinister. We need to start looking at them through the same lens we use to view the Sinaloa cartel or the mafia. When you strip away the Italian suits and the marble lobbies, the operational mechanics are identical. Let's talk about the business model of organized crime. If you run a drug cartel, you know that a certain percentage of your product is going to be seized by the police. A truck will get stopped at the border. A boat will be intercepted. Do you stop shipping drugs because of this? Of course not. You calculate the loss. You treat the seized cocaine not as a crime, but as a cost of goods sold. It is an operational expense, just like paying for gas or bribes. As long as the profit from the trucks that do get through outweighs the loss of the trucks that get caught, you are in business. Now, look at the decisions made on Wall Street. The logic is exactly the same, but the scale is infinitely larger, and the risk is significantly lower. Let's look at a hypothetical, but entirely realistic scenario, based on the revelations of the last decade. Imagine a megabank has the opportunity to launder money for a rogue state, or perhaps manipulate the LIBOR interest rate, or sell mortgage bonds they know are fraudulent. The executives sit down in a boardroom, behind the scenes where the public never looks, and they do the math. They don't ask, "Is this right?" They don't even ask, "Is this legal?" They ask, "How much will we make and how much will we be fined if we get caught?" Here is the math of the corporate veil in action. The illegal scheme is projected to generate $5 billion in pure profit over 3 years. The risk and compliance team estimates that if they get caught, and that is a big if, the regulatory fine will likely be around $500 million. Do you see the equation? Profit, $5,000. Penalty, $500,000. Net profit, $4.5 billion. In any other world, getting caught committing a felony ends your career. In the world of high finance, getting caught is just a transaction fee. That $500 million fine isn't a punishment, it is the government's cut. It is a toll booth on the highway of corruption. The bank pays the fine, issues a press release saying they neither admit nor deny wrongdoing, and they move on. The stock price might dip for a day, but the bonuses for that year are already secured. This is the architecture of corruption. It is a model where crime is not an aberration. It is the engine. When the penalty for a crime is less than the profit derived from the crime, the law ceases to exist. It transforms into a price list. It signals to the market that everything is for sale, including the integrity of the financial system. This transformation of fines into operating costs is the most dangerous development in modern economic history. It means that there is no deterrent. Why would a CEO stop laundering money if the fine is just 10% of the take? It would actually be a breach of his fiduciary duty to the shareholders, not to commit the crime, because the crime is profitable. This puts us on a terrifying journey toward a lawless economy. We are seeing banks that are essentially recidivists. repeat offenders. They get fined for fraud in 2010. They get fined for the same fraud in 2012. And again in 2015. Why? Because the model works. The impact of these crimes is devastated families, foreclosed homes, and destabilized economies. But inside the bank, the spreadsheets are all green. And it gets worse. Often these fines are tax deductible. Yes, you heard that right. In many cases, a corporation can write off a portion of its settlement with the government as a business expense. Imagine if you robbed a liquor store, got caught, paid a fine, and then deducted that fine from your income tax. It sounds insane, but that is the reality of the corporate veil. It shields them from the moral weight of their actions. This brings us to a harsh realization about the impact of this system on our society. We are told that the free market rewards efficiency and innovation. But this isn't the free market. This is a rigged game where the most successful players are the ones most willing to break the rules. The innovation here isn't better technology or better service. It is better ways to bypass the law. When you look behind the scenes, you realize that the compliance departments in these banks aren't there to prevent crime. They are there to manage the liability of the crime. They are there to ensure that when the hammer drops, the damage is contained to the corporate entity and doesn't touch the individuals running the show. It is a cynical, calculated approach to justice that turns the courtroom into a marketplace. This reality creates a profound disconnect. You, the citizen, operate under the threat of force. If you break the law, the state uses violence, prison, to stop you. The bank operates under the threat of a fee. They operate under a subscription model to the Department of Justice. They pay their dues, and they keep the racket running. The hidden truth is that the government has become addicted to these fines. The regulators justify their existence by collecting these massive payouts. It looks like they are being tough. You see the headline, Bank X fined $1 billion. It sounds like a lot of money. It sounds like justice. But it is theater. It is a performance designed to make you believe the system is working, while in reality, the money is just moving from one pocket of the elite to another, and the behavior never changes. If you are just waking up to this reality, it can feel like a punch to the gut. It makes you realize that the game isn't just rigged, the board itself is tilted. The decisions that affect your mortgage, your savings, and your job are being made by people who view laws as suggestions and fines as overhead. This isn't capitalism. This is a kleptocracy, ruled by thieves, hidden behind the respectable facade of a corporate logo. The sheer scale of this business model is what makes it so hard to comprehend. We aren't wired to understand theft on a billion-dollar scale. If someone steals your wallet, you understand that. But when a bank steals a fraction of a cent from every transaction in the world, or rigs the exchange rate of a currency, the crime is abstract. It's invisible. But the wealth transfer is real. It is the greatest heist in history, and it is happening in broad daylight, signed off by lawyers and accountants. As we continue this investigation, keep this profit versus fine equation in your mind. It explains everything. It explains why no one went to jail in 2008. It explains why the scandals keep happening. It explains why the rich get richer and the rest of us get stuck with the bill. They have monetized crime. I want to know if this mathematical reality hits you as hard as it hits me. It's one thing to suspect corruption. It's another to see the equation written out. If this breakdown of the business of crime resonates with you, drop a comment below. Just right, the math is rigged. Let's see how many of us are seeing the same numbers. But if fines are just a cost of doing business, surely there must be a line they cannot cross. Surely, if the crime is big enough, someone has to go to prison, right? Well, that brings us to the most disturbing concept of all, a doctrine that effectively grants these institutions sovereign immunity. It's a phrase you've probably heard, but you've likely never realized just how dangerous it truly is. As terrifying as that profit calculation is, we are now approaching the most disturbing realization of this entire investigation. We have talked about the corporate veil as a shield, and we have talked about fines as a business expense. But there is a threshold where the crime becomes so massive and the criminal so powerful that the legal system simply ceases to function altogether. This is the point where the logic of law collapses and the logic of survival takes over. We have entered the era of too big to jail. This isn't just a catchy slogan used by protesters outside the stock exchange. It is a de facto legal doctrine that is discussed in the highest corridors of power, often in hushed tones behind the scenes. It represents a fundamental transformation of the American justice system. The concept is chillingly simple. There are certain financial institutions that are so massive, so interconnected, and so vital to the global economy that prosecuting them criminally or arresting their top executives would cause a ripple effect that could destabilize the entire market. Think about the implications of that statement. It means that justice is no longer blind. Justice is now checking the stock market tickers before she decides to swing her sword. It implies that if you become powerful enough, you can hold the economy hostage. You can look at the prosecutor and say, "If you take me down, I take everyone down with me." And the terrifying truth is that the government believes them. This fear has given birth to one of the most controversial legal tools in modern history, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, or DPA. If you have never heard of this, pay close attention, because this is the magic wand that keeps bankers out of handcuffs. A DPA is essentially a deal where the government charges a company with a crime, but agrees to suspend the prosecution if the company pays a fine and promises to behave better in the future. It is probation for billionaires. Imagine if you were caught robbing a house and the judge said, "Okay, we know you did it and we have the evidence. But instead of going to prison, just pay us a fee, promise not to rob any more houses for 2 years, and we will pretend this never happened." You would laugh. You would say that is impossible. But for the financial elite, this is the standard operating procedure. This is the impact of the too big to jail mindset. It turns criminal indictments into negotiation leverage. The revelations that come from studying these agreements are startling. We see repeated instances where banks admit to felonies, money laundering for cartels, violating sanctions with rogue nations, rigging markets. And yet, no individual is handcuffed. No one sees the inside of a cell. Why? Because the prosecutors are paralyzed by the fear of systemic risk. They are terrified that if they revoke a bank's charter or put a CEO in prison, investors will panic, the stock will crash, and innocent employees will lose their jobs. So instead of upholding the law, the Department of Justice becomes a risk management firm. They weigh the decisions of justice against the stability of the GDP, and almost every single time, they choose the economy over the law. The result is the creation of a permanent class of untouchables. We have inadvertently created a modern aristocracy, a group of citizens who live in the same country as us, but operate under a completely different set of rules. This creates a profound psychological shift in the boardroom. If you are a CEO, and you know that the worst-case scenario is a DPA and a fine that the company pays, your mindset shifts from risk aversion to reckless abandonment. You are not restrained by the fear of personal ruin. You are empowered by the knowledge of your own indispensability. You are not just a banker, you are a pillar of the state, and the state cannot afford to let you crack. The journey to this point wasn't accidental. It was paved by memos and policy decisions that prioritized economic stability over moral accountability. But the cost of this stability is the erosion of trust in democracy itself. When the public sees that a kid can go to jail for possessing a plant, while a banker walks free after destroying the retirement savings of thousands, the social contract begins to dissolve. It sends a clear message. The law is a spider web designed to catch the weak flies, while the hornets tear right through it. We need to understand that too big to jail is not just about leniency. It is about surrender. It is the government admitting that it has lost control of the monster it created. The banks have grown so large, so complex, and so powerful that they have effectively outgrown the jurisdiction of the United States government. They exist in a supranational space where the only law is profit and the only sin is losing money. This hidden truth is what makes the situation so desperate. We aren't just fighting corruption, we are fighting a structural reality where the criminals have become essential to the survival of the host. It is a parasitic relationship where removing the parasite might kill the patient. And because of this, the prosecutors back down. They sign the settlements. They hold the press conferences. They use tough language. But behind the scenes, they are signing the papers that allow the game to continue right where it left off. It forces us to ask a very uncomfortable question. Do we live in a democracy? Or do we live in a corporatocracy? If the law does not apply equally to everyone, then the law is a farce. If there is a threshold of wealth that grants you immunity, then we have returned to the feudal system, just with better marketing. The corporate veil has become an iron dome, impenetrable to the forces of justice. The impact of this realization is heavy. It changes how you view every news story, every political speech, and every financial crisis. You realize that the game is not just rigged, it is fixed. The winners have already been decided, and the safeguards we think exist are merely illusions painted on the walls to keep us calm. But here is the thing. Understanding this is the first step in breaking the spell. They rely on our ignorance. They rely on us not understanding what a deferred prosecution agreement is. They rely on us thinking that too big to jail is just a conspiracy theory, rather than a documented legal strategy. But now you see the machinery. I want to know if this concept scares you as much as it should. Does the idea that some people are literally too important to be punished make your blood boil? If you are following this logic and you see the danger in this two-tiered justice system, I want you to leave a comment below. Write this specifically: no one is above the law. Let's fill the comments with that phrase to show that we see exactly what is happening. But even with all of this, the fines, the immunity, the corruption, there is still one final question we have to answer. Is this system actually broken? Or is it just possible that it is doing exactly what it was designed to do? To answer that, we have to look at the final piece of the puzzle. Ultimately, we have to stop asking how they get away with it and start asking why the door was left unlocked in the first place. This brings us to the most uncomfortable realization of our entire investigation, the moment where we have to look at the blueprint itself. For years, after every financial crash, after every bailout, and after every scandal, we hear the same tired refrain from politicians and pundits on the news. They look into the camera with furrowed brows and say, "The system is broken. We need to fix it." They talk about loopholes that need to be closed and regulations that need to be tightened. It is a comforting narrative. It suggests that the chaos we see is just an accident, a glitch in the machine, a temporary error that can be repaired with the right wrench and a little bit of elbow grease. But I am here to tell you that this is the greatest lie of them all. The system is not broken. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. When you look at the revelations we have uncovered, from the creation of the corporate veil to the doctrine of too big to jail, you aren't looking at cracks in the foundation. You are looking at the load-bearing walls. The impunity of the financial elite is not a bug in the software. It is the operating system itself. It is the architecture of modern finance. To think otherwise is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of power. An architect doesn't accidentally build a labyrinth. He builds it to confuse the intruder and protect the treasure. Think about the decisions that were made to get us here. Every deregulation, every court ruling that expanded corporate personhood, every deferred prosecution agreement. These were not mistakes. They were calculated moves on a chessboard. They were bought and paid for by lobbyists who understand that the best investment isn't in the stock market, but in the legislative market. The return on investment for purchasing a law that legalizes fraud is infinite. This shift in perspective is a crucial part of your transformation as an observer of this reality. Once you accept that the machine was built to extract wealth from the many and concentrate it in the hands of the few, everything suddenly makes sense. The 2008 crisis wasn't a failure of the system, it was a harvest. The wealth didn't disappear. It moved from your pension fund to their offshore accounts, and the system protected that transfer with the efficiency of a Swiss watch. This is the hidden truth that is so hard to swallow because it shatters our faith in the institutions we were raised to trust. We want to believe that the government is a referee trying to keep the game fair. But the reality is that the referee is on the payroll of the winning team. The corporate veil is the mechanism that allows the game to be played without the risk of penalty. It is the perfect crime, sanctioned by the state. We have to adjust our mindset regarding what corruption actually looks like. We tend to think of corruption as a bribe passed in a dark alley. But true, systemic corruption is legal. It is written in ink, stamped by a notary, and filed in a courthouse. It is the normalization of the abnormal. It is a society where a corporation is treated as a person when it comes to rights, but as an object when it comes to responsibilities. It is a psychopath by definition, an entity that pursues its own self-interest without empathy, remorse, or guilt. And we have given this entity the keys to the kingdom. The impact of this realization is not just economic, it is philosophical. It forces us to question the very nature of the social contract. If the rules apply only to those who cannot afford to rewrite them, then we are not living in a rule of law democracy. We are living in a sophisticated form of feudalism, where the lords of capital sit in their glass castles, shielded by the corporate veil, while the serfs down below argue about left versus right politics, distracted from the true robbery taking place above their heads. This journey we have taken, from the street crime to the boardroom crime, was meant to rip that veil apart. Now that you see the strings, you can no longer be a puppet. You can see the theater for what it is. When you see a bank pay a fine, you won't see justice served. You will see a commission paid. When you hear a CEO apologize, you won't hear remorse. You will hear a script written by a PR firm to manage the stock price. But here is the danger. It is easy to look at this colossal rigged machine and feel small. It is easy to feel that if the system is designed this way, then resistance is futile. That is exactly what they want you to feel. They rely on your apathy. They bank on the fact that the legal concepts are too boring and the numbers are too big for you to care. They count on the corporate veil remaining invisible to the average eye. But you are not the average eye anymore. You have seen behind the scenes. You understand the mechanics. And knowledge, once acquired, cannot be taken away. This information is a weapon. The moment you stop believing in the illusion of their legitimacy is the moment their power begins to fracture. The system only works as long as we believe it is broken and try to fix it. Once we realize it is fixed, in the sense of being rigged, we stop trying to repair it and start thinking about how to replace it, or at least, how to survive it without being consumed by it. This is where the true revelations happen. Not in the news, but in your own understanding of the world. You are now equipped with the lens to decode the headlines. You can see the matrix of incentives that drives the world. And while we cannot tear down Wall Street overnight, we can tear down the veil of ignorance that allows them to operate in the shadows. We can shine a light on the cockroaches, and if there is one thing we know, it's that they hate the light. So the question is no longer, is the system broken? The question is, now that I know the system is working perfectly for them, what am I going to do to make sure I don't get crushed by it? It is a question of survival, of awareness, and of refusing to play their game by their rules. We have dissected the body of the beast. We have looked at its heart, its brain, and its shield. It is a perfect organism of consumption, but every organism has a weakness, and for this one, the weakness is visibility. The corporate veil only works if we don't look directly at it. I want to know if you are ready to accept this harder truth. It's comforting to think we can just vote harder or pass a law to fix this, but admitting that the design itself is hostile requires a different level of courage. If you are with me on this, if you see the architecture for what it really is, leave a comment below. Write, I see the strings. Let that be our code. Let them know that we are watching and we understand exactly how the trick is performed. And now that we have stripped away the legal fiction and exposed the machinery, there is one final step we must take. We need to talk about the future, because this isn't just history, it is a warning of what is coming next if we don't change the narrative. If you have made it this far, take a breath. We just covered a lot of heavy ground, and I know this kind of information can be frustrating to process. It changes the way you look at the world, and frankly, most people would rather just close their eyes and go back to sleep. But the fact that you are still listening tells me that you are the kind of person who prefers a difficult truth over a comfortable lie. And that is exactly who we are building this channel for. If you value this kind of deep dive investigation, where we respect your intelligence and don't just skim the surface, make sure you are subscribed. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss the next piece of the puzzle we're putting together here. And if this video connected with you, if it gave you a perspective you didn't have 20 minutes ago, go ahead and hit the like button. It's a small gesture, but it lets me know that we are on the right track and that you want more content like this. Since you are one of the few who actually watches until the very end, I want to know who you are. Leave a comment down below with the phrase, "No turning back." It tells me you've digested the whole story and you're ready for what comes next. And speaking of what comes next, understanding the law is only half the battle. You also need to understand the money itself. I've selected a video for you right here on the screen that explains how the money in your pocket is being manipulated by the very same people we just talked about. It complements this story perfectly. Click right there, and let's continue this conversation.